There's something about the beach at night that can be both mesmerizing and eerie. You know the feeling, the waves softly crashing, the salty breeze, the vastness of the ocean stretching into darkness. My friends and I used to love it. We'd go out there with a couple of drinks, some snacks, and just chill under the stars. But one night, everything changed. It was the summer after our freshman year of college. My buddies, Sarah, Mike, and I had rented a beach house for the weekend. We were all excited to escape the grind and just unwind. One evening, we decided to head down to the beach with a blanket and a cooler full of beer. It was one of those perfectly warm nights where the sea was calm and the sky was clear, the stars scattered like glitter. As we set up near the dunes, Sarah noticed a faint glow off in the distance. At first, we thought it was a campfire, but there was no flicker, just a steady light. Curiosity piqued. Mike suggested we check it out, but Sarah and I hesitated. I mean, we were here to relax, not to go on a wild goose chase. Besides, it was probably just some locals fishing or something, right? We brushed it off and cracked open a couple of beers. As the night wore on, the mood became more relaxed. We were laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying the perfect night. That's when things started getting weird. Out of nowhere, the glow we'd noticed earlier began to move closer, not quickly, just slowly inching toward us. We all fell silent, staring at the approaching light. Mike, always the brave one, stood up and squinted into the darkness. "It's just someone with a flashlight," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. But I could hear the unease in his voice. Sarah, looking pale, whispered, "Why would anyone be out here alone at this time?" As the light drew nearer, we saw it wasn't just a flashlight. It was an orb of light, hovering about 5 feet off the ground, drifting silently closer. My heart pounded in my chest. We all stood up, our eyes locked on this bizarre phenomenon. The light stopped a few yards away, just hanging in the air. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something else, a shadowy figure standing on top of the dunes, just beyond the orb. I could barely make out the silhouette, but it was tall, unnaturally so, and completely still. The figure had no discernible features, just a dark, looming presence. "What the hell is that?" Mike muttered, taking a cautious step back. The figure didn't move, but the orb seemed to pulse slightly, as if in response to our presence. It felt like we were being watched, scrutinized by some unseen eyes. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We need to go," she whispered urgently. But none of us could move, rooted to the spot by a mixture of fear and fascination. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the orb blinked out of existence, plunging the beach into darkness. In the same instant, the shadowy figure vanished. Panic surged through us, and we grabbed our things, scrambling back towards the beach house, our laughter replaced by nervous breaths. We spent the rest of the night huddled inside, all windows and doors locked, the eerie experience playing on repeat in our minds. The next morning, we cautiously ventured out, but found no signs of the orb or the figure. It was as if nothing had happened, but we knew better. Something, or someone, had been out there, watching us. We never spoke of it again, but every now and then I wonder what we encountered that night. Was it just a trick of the light, a figment of our imagination, or something far more sinister, lurking in the shadows of the dunes? What would you do if you saw something like that on a peaceful night at the beach? Was it just a trick of the light, or something far more sinister lurking in the dunes? I'd love to hear your thoughts or any creepy beach encounters you've had. Share them in the comments below. I'm curious to know if anyone else has ever felt like they were being watched. And if that story made your skin crawl, stick around for the Phantom Sailor. In the next tale, we'll journey to a haunted cove where old legends and ghostly figures come to life. Trust me, You won't want to miss what happens next. There's a particular stretch of coastline that locals in my hometown have always whispered about. It's not on any tourist map, tucked away behind a maze of residential streets and dense shrubbery. Known as the Dead Man's Cove, it's the kind of place you'd hear stories about but never actually visit. Until, of course, someone dares you to go. It was a warm July night, and my friend group, Jason, Rachel, and I, had just finished a barbecue at Jason's place. After a few beers, the conversation naturally drifted towards ghost stories and local legends. Inevitably, someone brought up Deadman's Cove, and before long, we were daring each other to visit. The timing was perfect. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. Fueled by liquid courage and curiosity, we decided to go. We parked a little way off and trekked through the overgrown path that led to the cove. The air was humid, with the sweet scent of ocean mist blending with the earthy aroma of the foliage. As we pushed through the last of the bushes, the cove opened up before us, a small, secluded beach surrounded by cliffs. The water was calm, almost unnaturally so, reflecting the moonlight like a polished mirror. We spread out a blanket and settled down, feeling adventurous, but also a bit silly for believing in the old tales. After all, we were adults now, not kids scared of shadows. But as we sat there, the silence became oppressive. It was as if the world had stopped breathing, the usual sounds of the night conspicuously absent. No crickets, no waves, nothing. Just an unsettling stillness. Jason, always the jokester, started telling the story of the Phantom Sailor, a legendary figure who supposedly haunts Deadman's Cove. The tale goes that a sailor from a long-forgotten shipwreck wanders the shore at night, searching for something or someone lost at sea. Those who see him are said to be marked for misfortune. Just as Jason finished his tale, we heard it, the sound of footsteps crunching on the pebbles behind us. We all whipped around, expecting to see another late-night beachgoer. But there was nothing, just the empty beach and the cliffs looming behind us. Rachel laughed nervously, suggesting it was just the wind or some animal. But then the footsteps came again, louder this time, moving closer. We stood up, peering into the darkness. The moonlight was bright, but it seemed to create more shadows than it illuminated. And then we saw him, a figure standing at the water's edge. He was dressed in what looked like old-fashioned sailor's clothing, tattered and wet. His face was obscured by a shadow, but the air around him seemed to grow colder, as if he was sucking the warmth out of the night. "Do you see that?" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. We all nodded, too stunned to speak. The figure turned slowly, his eyes, or what we thought were his eyes, glinting in the moonlight. A chill ran down my spine, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I couldn't move, as if my feet were glued to the sand. The sailor began to walk towards us, his movements slow and deliberate. With each step, the temperature seemed to drop further. Panic surged through us, and we finally broke free of our paralysis. We grabbed our things and bolted, not stopping until we reached the car, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. As we sped away, I glanced back, half expecting to see him following us. But there was nothing, just the quiet, eerie landscape of the cove, bathed in silver moonlight. We didn't speak much on the drive back, each of us lost in our thoughts. Had we just imagined it? Was it some elaborate prank? The next day, we learned that a boat had been found wrecked on the rocks near Deadman's Cove. The Coast Guard reported it had likely been there for decades, maybe longer. No bodies were ever recovered, but among the wreckage, they found an old sailor's cap, remarkably well preserved despite the years. The discovery sent shivers down my spine, but we agreed never to discuss what we saw again. To this day, I avoid Deadman's Cove. The memory of that night lingers, a cold reminder of the unexplained and the possibly supernatural. Sometimes I wonder if the phantom sailor is still out there, waiting, watching, searching, and I can't help but shudder. The beach was supposed to be our escape, a perfect serene getaway from the daily grind. My boyfriend Alex and I had rented a small beachside cabin for a long weekend, hoping to unplug and recharge. The area was known for its picturesque views and peaceful atmosphere, with miles of untouched shoreline. We arrived on a Friday afternoon, excited to leave our worries behind. The first 2 days were idyllic. We spent our time lounging on the sand, swimming in the crystal clear water and enjoying the spectacular sunsets. The cabin was cozy, with large windows offering panoramic views of the ocean. It was everything we had hoped for. But on the third night, a dense fog rolled in, blanketing the beach in a thick white mist. It was eerie, but also beautiful in a way, softening the world into a hazy dreamscape. That evening, we decided to take a walk along the shore, hoping the fog would lift. The air was cool and damp, and the only sound was the gentle lapping of the waves. It felt like we were the only people left in the world, wrapped in a cocoon of mist and silence. We walked hand in hand, the sand soft beneath our feet, barely able to see more than a few yards ahead. As we strolled, we started hearing faint sounds, muffled voices, and what sounded like laughter. It was odd, considering the beach had been empty all day, and the cabins nearby were mostly vacant. At first, we thought it was just the sound carrying from the ocean, but as we walked further, the noises became clearer. There was definitely someone or something out there. Curiosity piqued, we decided to investigate. We followed the sounds, which seemed to come from just beyond the thickest part of the fog. The laughter grew louder, but it wasn't the kind of laughter that makes you want to join in. It was harsh, almost mocking, echoing strangely in the mist. My skin prickled with unease, but Alex insisted we continue. "Probably just some locals having a good time," he said, trying to keep the mood light. As we pressed on, the fog began to play tricks on our senses. The sound seemed to come from all directions, and shadows flickered at the edge of our vision. I gripped Alex's hand tighter, feeling an uncomfortable knot of anxiety form in my stomach. We rounded a bend, and suddenly, the laughter stopped. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint rustling of the wind through the dunes. We stood there, straining our ears when we heard it. A single low chuckle, close enough to make us both jump. It came from our left, near a cluster of large rocks. We turned, peering into the fog, but saw nothing. The chuckle came again, and this time it was followed by a whisper, too faint to make out. I felt a chill run down my spine, as if we were being watched by unseen eyes. "Let's go back," I whispered, trying to pull Alex away. But before we could move, a figure emerged from the fog. It was a man, or at least it looked like one, but something was off. His movements were jerky, unnatural, and his face was partially obscured by the mist. He stood there, swaying slightly, staring at us with an unsettling grin. "Evening," he said, his voice carrying an odd, echoing quality. There was something in his tone that made my blood run cold. Alex managed a nervous laugh, greeting the man, but I could see the unease in his eyes. The man tilted his head, still grinning, and asked, "Looking for something?" Before we could respond, more figures appeared, stepping out of the fog like ghosts. They all wore the same strange, frozen smiles. The atmosphere grew oppressive, the fog pressing in on us like a living thing. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in danger, surrounded by something not entirely human. Without another word, Alex and I turned and bolted back towards the cabin, our feet pounding the sand. The laughter resumed behind us, louder and more distorted, mingling with the sound of our frantic breathing. We didn't stop until we were back inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. Peering out the window, we saw nothing but fog. The mysterious figures vanished as if they had never been there. We left the next morning, cutting our trip short. We never spoke about what happened on that foggy night, but the memory haunts me still. I can't explain what we saw or who or what those people were. But sometimes on foggy nights, I swear I can still hear that eerie laughter echoing faintly in the back of my mind. If you want to see more horror stories, check out my next video.